Can I, let me go here. How much time do we have in this break? I want to talk to you, we have enough time here. I want to talk to you a little bit about something that I found as I was preparing for 828. David, you know, I prepared for a year just reading as much as I can. I just kept going over the Moses story and the exodus of, you know, the Israelites and the time they spent and Jeremiah and all of it. And I get to the God of ancient Babylon, and I see what happened in ancient Babylon. And the God of ancient Babylon was Baal, B-A-A-L. And this jumped out at me so much. I was just like, oh my gosh. And what it was ancient Babylon and the Tower of Babel, and we'll do a show on this, so but let me give you the highlights here. Basically, the king says, you know what? We're all going to be one.
Yeah.
And it's the first socialism.
Yeah.
Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism. And the god of ancient Babylon was, Baal was the god of weather and war and commerce. So in other words, and the reason why is he who controls the weather, he who knows what's happening with the weather, then can make money because of the plantings and everything else, and also can wage war, because if you know what the weather is going to be like, you're not getting trapped in a snowstorm or anything else. And I thought to myself, this is the same God. We are now worshiping, or the environmentalists are now worshiping the ancient god of Babylon, the god of weather.
Exactly. And
they're saying, you got to worship the god of weather. That way there won't be war, and that way there'll be commerce, and we can all live. It's repeating itself from the very beginning.
And it really is ironic, because their whole assumption behind all of environmentalism is that the Earth, and particularly its climate system, is very fragile. It's all unstable. So that, for example, changing the proportion of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from 27 ten-thousandths of a percent to 39 ten-thousandths of a percent can have caused catastrophic climate change. And that doesn't make sense in terms of what we read in the Bible, which tells us that God made the heavens and the earth, and when he was finished making it, he looked at it, and behold, it was very good. Now, if I were an architect and I designed a building so that if you leaned on one wall, all the feedback mechanisms magnified the pressure of your weight on that wall, and the whole building collapsed, we'd all say, that was not a very wise architect, right? Why are we saying that the God who designed this creation made the climate system so that tiny change in atmospheric chemistry could send all of it into catastrophe?
Back in just a second. Well, that's assuming there is a God, and we all know, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Back in a minute. Back now with Cal Beisner, Cornwall Alliance, and David Barton of Wall Builders, and I'm going to turn it over to David now, because this is what we're talking about. Let there be stuff. This is the latest from George Soros. Spooky dude George Soros. I swear to you, you've got to watch. I think it's episode 6 of the Star Wars movies, where the Emperor's like, remember, he's sitting in that big spooky chair and he turns around. It's George Soros. Anyway, this is the latest from the Tides Foundation, and this is for kids in synagogues, and this will now be found in your churches. Warning, I warned you about a year ago, they are coming for your church and your faith. They are doing it now. Let there be stuff. Make sure you keep this episode on DVR and spread it around and tell all of your friends, because nobody's talking about this stuff yet. David, take us from here.
In talking about creation, because that's what they're talking about within the churches, churches, synagogues, is creation. There's really two general views of creation, how it fits together. The more traditional view is the one that most Americans hold. 84% of Americans to this day, most recent polling, believe that God made the heaven and the earth. So there is, despite all the stuff we've taught for 40 years with evolution, 84% still believe God is involved. So let me show you how the grid works on this. If I go over here to your blackboard. I learned all this blackboard stuff from you.
Let me ask you a question, David, because I don't know if the people have different religions. Even people in my religion answer this differently. I have no idea how God creates. I believe God created man and the heavens and earth. I don't know how he created.
Right.
I have no idea. It's not essential to my salvation.
what's essential is that God did it. It was not done by us. And within that 84%, it's split almost evenly between those who believe in theistic evolution and those who believe in literal age-day evolution.
Right, that somehow or another it just all appeared.
Well, 6 days, it happened in 6 days, or it happened in eons, whatever it is.
But does it matter if 6 days to God? I mean, I don't think God is like, on Timex time going, come on, I got to get this done in 1 day, his day.
The deal is that he did it.
Right,
and because that gives him moral authority to say things past that. If he made it, he can tell us how to operate it and use it. And that's what's important. Okay. And under that, and that's what we call traditional religious view, Judeo-Christian, whatever else you want to call it.
Right.
What happens is creation occurs in an ascending order. Over that period of time, you start with the inanimate and you end up with the animate. You start with the animate, which is earth. Then over time, you get plants and fish and birds and animals and man. This is the apex of creation right here. Everything was moving toward this. So this is the top of what God has created. That's the most important thing out there. Least important is the inanimate.
How arrogant for you to say, I'm playing devil's advocate.
But you're right.
How arrogant of you to say that you are at the top of that pyramid.
Now see, here's the other side. What you've just articulated is the secular religious view. And there is a secular religious view. The difference is over here, what we do, Ten Commandments. Traditional religious view, we look at the 10 Commandments and say, oh, that's what the religion says. I need to change my belief to conform to that. I need to not kill, not steal, whatever. Over here, they look and they say, I don't like the 10 Commandments. So they'll create a religion that incorporates different changes in 10 Commandments. It really doesn't mean
it's
murder.
It's a progressive view.
That's right. It's like a living constitution. They just rewrite it as they want to. It is a religion. And they will assemble in churches and other places. They have a view, a religious view.
I mean, here in California, you go to churches. I actually went to a church back east where the pastor said, now you know that I don't believe in God. But if there is a God, we should serve him. And I'm like,
in a church.
I mean, that should be on the bulletin someplace. But would you put atheists in there too? Because atheists, that is a religion. I don't understand why.
It comes from a secular view. And atheism is a religion. We have a number of court cases saying atheism is a religion.
Right.
You go through court cases like all these Supreme Court cases say whatever you believe so strongly that it affects your behavior is your religion.
Good.
So I can go through all
sorts.
But yeah, that's a religion.
Okay.
Now, in that religion, what happens is the most important is the inanimate, the least important is the animate. You go in exactly the opposite thing. This is what's at the top of the apex. Everything centers around this. Everything else serves this. Everything else moves up toward this. And the least important thing out there is man. That's why we can inconvenience man to any degree as long as we can save this. Now, over here, it's reversed around. Man is the apex, and we're going to try to make things more convenient. We're going to try to improve his health. We're going to try to improve his longevity. We focus at this, whereas a secular viewpoint will focus at this. This is what they do. And so that curriculum, which is a religious curriculum, is a secular religious curriculum because it puts man at the bottom. Man is here to serve earth.
Here's the thing here. If you're here, if you believe this, then you have these arguments. Well, if I could save all men by killing out, if I could save one child by killing all the bunny rabbits in the world, that's your argument there.
Right.
Okay? But here you have, do you remember the poster that we put up on the screen? Let me put it up on the screen now, of I pledge allegiance to the earth.
Yes.
This, you don't have the opportunity to even have that question of would you be a good person if you wiped out all of the bunny rabbits? You couldn't do it.
That's right.
Because you're at the bottom of the food chain.
That's right.
Right.
You're at the bottom. Everything, you're the one that's least important in this. And there's some examples of that. I mean, you've got that poster. I've got some others that I'll show you too.
Okay.
How that every one of these things in the secular view, they're willing to inconvenience man. Whatever. Ask people here in California about the little fish. Can they water their agriculture?
No way. Not there. Like I lived in Arizona and it's zero-scape.
Yeah.
And look, you're bringing water in to Arizona. You don't need. A lot of people move there for their allergies. Stop bringing the trees and the flowers and everything that aren't indigenous there. So that makes sense. But in California, you can't grow food because it inconveniences the fish.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yep.
This is why you go to jail if you destroy an eagle's egg. And you are protected if you destroy a baby in its mother's womb. Animals over people.
I never even thought of it. You do. If you destroy an eagle's egg, you go to jail. There's no difference.
That's right.
You kill a human baby.
Except look at this.
It's actually
birds are higher up than man.
Yeah.
Birds are higher up than man. And that's what you'll find in public policy. We will protect every one of those other things more than we will protect man. No question about it. And everything has to serve the earth. But everything has more value than man does in that other policy.
Do you realize, gentlemen, this has really occurred to me. This is how I think. We've been putting this show together for a while. It just dawned on me. Do you realize how much trouble you guys are in and I'm in now for I mean, they are going to rip you apart more than you already have been, rip you apart for this.
We're used to it. But just to make sure that we're not just simply telling a broad idea about this, this is what they themselves say. David Brower, for example, who founded Friends of the Earth, said that if he were to be wandering in the woods someday and found a grizzly bear attacking a child, he would probably defend the grizzly bear, because after all, the forest is the bear's habitat. Prince Philip of England,
he'd come back as a virus.
Yeah, said if I were reincarnated, I'd like to come back as a killer virus to reduce human populations to a sane level.
Back in just a minute. I just wish we were a government-funded entity so we wouldn't have all these commercials, because you just missed a fabulous conversation. We are talking about the Story of Stuff project. This comes from the Tides Foundation. Spooky dude George Soros, one world government, yes. He's now going into your churches. Ask your pastor, your priest, or your rabbi, if you see anything like this going to your kids, run for your life. You are in the wrong church. I mean, unless you're an environmentalist that worships, you know, Gaia or whoever it is now. Let there be stuff, a spirit-filled response to a consumer-crazed world. I want you to know that we do consume an awful lot. We are worshiping a different God. Many of us, we are worshiping the God of stuff, the God of a logo or a label. We don't need it. We don't need it. When you know a society is screwed up, when people will stand in line for the new cell phone, that they already have a cell phone, they just want that one. We're a little screwed up as a society. Cal Beisner is here, and David Barton also with me, and we're talking about this upside-down world where we're now being taught in not just schools, but now in churches and synagogues. Any doubt in your mind that the progressive left is coming for the kill on religion?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And part of the reason is because traditional Christian faith and biblical faith in America has been the most resistant to the whole progressive agenda.
Yes.
Poll after poll has shown the people who have been most skeptical about things like, catastrophic man-made global warming or about other environmental hypes and scares have been those people who assert the greatest belief in the Bible.
Right. That was the problem. You know this, David. It was the problem in the first real progressive movement in the early 1900s. Yeah. And it is the reason why we have had. I actually had a progressive write to me and say, "This is such hogwash. God played no role in freeing the slaves." Really? Really?
Not in his textbook.
Yeah, not in his textbook, but in actual history.
In actual history.
And it also led to the founding of the nation. It was a great awakening. It was God. And that's what they found out in the first progressive movement. If we don't have God, if we don't have him, if we can't control these churches, Wilson, his father was a preacher. Most everybody in the early progressive movement, their father or somebody involved was a preacher.
You bet.
And they hated it. Right? It was a twisted version. They hated it.
I mean, the ACLU was headed by a preacher in the progressive movement. Americans for Democratic Action, headed by a preacher in the progressive movement. It is amazing how many of those progressive organizations were headed by a preacher.
Jim Wallace. And Jim Wallace today, he's an amazing individual.
Who also takes money from George Soros.
No. Yeah. It's almost like George Soros is the head of the snake. Anyway,